So I have entire playlists on this channel talking about the nuances of footsies, whiff punishing, all that, but I wanted to talk about two things that you should do pretty much every game. You know, simplify it a little bit, make it easier to get started and comfortable, and really try to see if our opponent is willing to whiff and bait them into whiffing and set up our own whiff punishes. I also want to talk about what we do if our opponent isn't whiffing in these situations that we're baiting. What's our next kind of counterplay to make sure we're taking advantage of the fact that they're scared to press buttons. Okay, so the first one, it's very obvious. I've talked about it on this channel before, and it's spacing traps. You really want to find out which moves make your opponent want to press buttons back, right? So for Cammy, if I did this button in front of your face, you might want to press the button back because everyone knows it's minus. It visually looks like it's minus, but it actually has a lot of pushback. Same with this move used to be like that as well, but the pushback dropped a lot. So I used to be able to do it from like here, and you wouldn't really be able to counter poke. But now from here, it might still work depending on what moves person does back. So find out what that is for your character. So for Cammy, even at a close range like this, if I press that medium kick, a lot of people want to press the button back. Now, a character like Luke, his medium punch won't work, but characters who might want to do their crouching medium kick back, you gotta watch out for that, right? Another thing to consider is how minus is the move you're doing. So this move is -3, right? So if someone does an 8-frame crouching medium kick back like Cammy, that's a big gap. So you could actually stuff it if you want by doing something like this. If we know he's going crouching medium kick, we can actually stuff it as a counter hit. Even from point blank, right? But he's not going to crouch medium kick because we're not far enough for it to reach. We can actually stuff it. If he's going for crouching medium punch, we would prefer to try to make it whiff because this doesn't reach as far. And if we can make it whiff, we can whiff punish it, right? So find out these kind of scenarios for your own character and what you do here. Now, what do we do if our opponent doesn't whiff, right? They just respect the fact that we press this button and they sit there and block. Well, there's two things. One, you try to steal a turn, right? Which means you just do something like this. You know, you just do something like this. Like that's a little riskier. But I've seen Punk, who's one of the best players in the world, do stuff like this into a medium punch or a medium kick, drive rush, whatever, and continuous pressure. And you should think to yourself, why is he doing that when he's -3? Because he either has the read that his opponent isn't going to press buttons back because they might know it's a spacing trap, or they might be unfamiliar with the situation, or he's conditioned them to think they're not allowed to by stuffing out their medium kicks and whatnot. The other thing is, if you know your opponent's willing to sit still, they might be trying to see what you're doing next. You know, you can walk forward and get more pressure. You can jump. If you notice, if you're setting up scenarios where your opponent should whiff and you're trying to bait them to whiff and they're not doing it, you really want to be aggressive in this scenarios. Obviously, sometimes you might just be wrong. You're going to think, oh, they're not going to press anything. I'm going to walk forward, and you walk into a medium punch. Yeah, sometimes you'll be wrong. But especially until you get to some of the higher ranks, a lot of people will have habits they don't even realize they have, and they'll all, after they block a long range move like this, they might always press their medium or their medium kick, right? And you really want to exploit that. Now, this goes along with spacing traps, but rather than doing a single move, you're kind of doing a sequence that leaves you out of range. Now, a lot of people will press their medium punches because there's no plus frames in Street Fighter 6 off jabs and whatnot, right? If I was to do 3 jabs against Luke, his medium punch would always make me block, and if I tried to do anything else, like a medium kick, let's say, he would counter hit me. If I tried to do a standing leg kick, he would counter hit me. So against scenarios like this, you really want to find sequences that push your opponent out just a little bit more, right? For Cammy, if I use her leg kick once, it actually has more pushback, and we can make that move whiff. And we set up our own whiff punish. So this is kind of a spacing trap. It's still just a spacing trap, but it's more of a sequence rather than doing, you know, single moves that bait people to whiff. Lastly, we want to bait people to whiff. This is the most common, you know, Footsies 101 thing, is you want to make people whiff by walking into the range of where they want to use their best buttons. The idea is, once you know which button your opponent likes to press, sometimes it's just a matchup thing. Most Cammys like to press this button. Most Lukes like to press his medium punch. Most Kens like to press his crouch medium kick, right? So once we're comfortable with Ken's medium kick range, right, it should just barely whiff here. We want to walk forward to bait it and then walk out of the range, right? The most common, easy Footsies 101 thing ever, okay? Now, let's say you're playing against someone. You're used to doing this against Ken. Sometimes it works. You walk forward, you walk back. The Ken did nothing. Or maybe he threw a fireball, or maybe he jumped at you. Okay, sure, it didn't work. You try it again, it didn't work. At that point, you need to realize you're trying to bait your opponent to whiff against an opponent who's not trying to, like, reactively press buttons to your walk up. So what do? You walk forward more. You walk forward jump. In Cammy's case, you might walk forward dive kick. You walk forward, do your own buttons, or you just eat at their drive gauge, right? There's so many options here if you know your opponent's not willing to hold down their space. So it's like a two-part thing. You want to bait your opponent to whiff because people naturally want to hold down the space in front of you. They don't want to allow people to just walk up at them, right? And if you notice you're fighting someone who doesn't do that, then you take the space, right? You walk forward extra and just throw them. You walk forward jab. You walk forward medium punch, whatever. You walk forward dive kick in Cammy's case. So these are two of the most simple, but I really want you to get used to doing them in every single match and reacting to how your opponent like counterplays them. Are they actually whiffing on your spacing traps? If not, if they're pressing nothing, then take advantage. Are they reacting to whiffing on your walk forwards? If not, take the space. This is a huge thing about Guile. If you watch my last video, one of my last videos talking about where you should stand in certain matchups. If you do this to Guile and he doesn't whiff, he doesn't boom, he's just scared, right? Like from this range, he's gonna boom or try to anti-air you. Let's say you just managed to walk forward to this range and he's not whiffing buttons, take the space. What better scenario is there when you just get to make Guile block for fun because he's too scared to take space? Or he does whiff and you whiff punish him, you get in front of his face, he's no longer as threatening as the zoning character, right? So this video I'm kind of going back to basics, but I feel like the more you try to learn everything about neutral and footsies, the more some of the kind of concrete, easy to do every single game to get a read on your opponent ones maybe start to flutter out of your mind because you're trying to think about too much. Let's go back to basics for a few games. Do these against every opponent, see how they react and what you could do back to them. If you learned something, I appreciate a like, comment, subscription, my friends. Make sure to check out my other videos about more nuance and neutral, more learning about matchups. And let me know in the comments if there's anything specific you want me to tackle. Stay beautiful, my friends. See you next time.